Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a literal microscopic whodunit based on some truly groundbreaking nematode research. We are looking at a totally fascinating biological mystery that reveals exactly how complex, aggressive behaviors emerge in nature. Basically, we're going to track the evolution of a killer. Let's get into it. Picture this. How on earth does a creature with absolutely no eyes, no complex limbs, operating completely in the dark, manage to become an apex predator? We're talking about an organism on a microscopic scale that has somehow evolved to become a highly effective hunter of its own kind. To figure out how it pulls this off, researchers actually had to treat the whole thing like a crime scene investigation. All right, first things first. We need to meet our microscopic killer. To really understand what makes our suspect so special, we gotta contrast it with its incredibly unassuming cousins. You've probably heard of the famous model organism C. elegans, right? It just peacefully grazes on microbes. But our suspect, P. pacificus, well, it has evolved a terrifying taste for other nematodes. It's an omnivore, sure, so it eats bacteria, but it actively hunts, attacks, and feeds on other worm larvae. This is wild. Depending on its environment, P. pacificus can actually shapeshift its mouth. It can develop a narrow sta mouth, which is only good for feeding on bacteria, or it can develop the U mouth. The U mouth is this wider, much more intimidating structure equipped with an extra tooth, and that tooth is explicitly designed to puncture the outer layer of its prey. But having the weapon is only half the battle, right? If it's blind, how does it actually find its target? Moving right along, let's interrogate the sensory suspects. Since the killer is completely blind, researchers had to interrogate its other senses. They started with mechanosensation, which is basically the biological term for the sense of physical touch. Now, regular worms like C. elegans mostly just use touch to keep from bumping into obstacles. But researchers had a hunch. What if P. pacificus repurposed that exact same sense to feel out its prey? To test this, the scientific detectives used CRISPR to systematically mutate a massive 27 canonical mechanosensory genes. They literally knocked out the worm's touch sensors one by one to hunt down the exact genetic culprit that controls this hunting behavior. And bingo, out of all those genes, knocking out two specific ones, PPMEC6 and PPMEC3, drastically reduced the worm's hunting success. When these specific genes were broken, the worms failed standard touch tests. Placed in a dish full of prey, their kill count just completely plummeted. They simply couldn't feel what they were hunting anymore. But wait, there's more. The worm uses a synergistic hunting strategy. The touch system wasn't acting alone. It had an accomplice, and that accomplice was smell. The master regulator gene for chemosensation, or smell and taste, in this predator is called PPA-DAF19. When researchers broke that gene, it caused severe chemosensory defects, basically robbing the killer of its ability to smell its victims. And just like the touch mutants, these smell-blind worms turned into terrible hunters. The researchers did what they call a corpse assay, literally counting the dead bodies left behind. What they found was that wild-type worms, with all their senses totally intact, rack up massive kill counts. If you have a mutant missing either touch or smell, the kills drop to medium. But if you break both genes, the kill rate absolutely tanks. It proves these senses aren't just backups for one another. They work synergistically. The worm absolutely needs to smell and feel its prey to execute a perfect hunt. Okay, let's start profiling the predator's actual behavior. To figure out the killer's exact MO, scientists fed tracking data into a sophisticated machine learning algorithm. This revealed exactly how the worms divide their time. You've got the aggressive states: predatory search, predatory biting, and predatory feeding. And then you have peaceful exploration states like dwelling and roaming. By watching the mutant worms, researchers could pinpoint the exact step where the hunt was failing. Here's where it gets really interesting. Taking away just one sense forces the worm into a desperate extended search mode. The machine learning data show that if you remove touch or smell, the worms spend significantly more time stuck in the predatory search state. It's a biological compensatory mechanism. They realize something is missing, so they frantically search longer and harder to try and make up for that lost sensory data. So we have the weapons and the behavior, but where is the brain's hunting headquarters? Where is all this touch and smell data actually being processed? Well, using fluorescent imaging, researchers discovered that both of these sensory pathways lead straight to a tiny cluster called the IL-2 neurons. There are exactly 6 of these, and incredibly, they project all the way out to the external environment, right at the worm's nose. It's literally the perfect strategic spot to act as the first point of contact for detecting a victim. To prove these neurons were the true command center, scientists pulled off a brilliant biological hack. They engineered the worms so that exposing them to histamine acted like a literal off switch, shutting down those specific IL-2 neurons. The second they introduced the histamine, they watched the worm's predatory abilities just crash. Searching, biting, feeding, all of it dropped. The command center was totally confirmed. Which brings us to the big picture: evolution by biological hacking. So, the mystery of how this microscopic detective hunts is solved, but this actually reveals a much larger universal law about nature. Evolution is the ultimate recycler. Predatory behavior didn't just appear out of nowhere. Think about pit vipers repurposing ordinary skin receptors so they can suddenly see body heat in the dark. This nematode did the exact same thing. It hacked its ordinary, existing touch and smell systems, the same ones its cousins used to graze on bacteria, and completely rewired them to become a lethal hunter. There's a quote directly from the study that really hits the nail on the head. Predation evolved through the co-option of mechanosensory and chemosensory systems that act together. It's such a great reminder that you don't always need to evolve completely new biology to get complex, novel traits. Entirely new behaviors can emerge just by rewiring simple, ancient systems together in a new way. This whole deep dive leaves us with a thrilling and maybe kind of spooky question to ponder. If a microscopic, blind worm can rewire its basic senses to become an apex predator, what other hidden predatory abilities are quietly evolving in the microscopic world right beneath our feet? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and always keep questioning the incredible mechanics of the natural world.